In today's video, we're going to be discussing all the latest NHL trade rumors, mostly focusing on the Chicago Blackhawks today. As you probably know, they made a big trade the other day with the Arizona Coyotes. They opened up a lot of cap space, and there's been a lot of speculation running rampant ever since on what their next move might be. There's apparently all kinds of players that they're looking at and having discussions with around making another big trade. We're going to discuss all those rumors coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams. So if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top, today we're focusing on some trade rumors, but we're mostly talking about the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, as you probably know, and if you haven't seen the video yet, there's a link down in the description on the video we did the other day talking about a big trade gone down here between the Hawks and the Arizona Coyotes. Obviously, they were able to move the contract of Marian Hossa. Of course, they had to sweeten the deal and they had to throw in a few other players into that mix. There were 7 players in total kind of swapping positions here in teams, and a few draft picks involved as well. So obviously that's given the Blackhawks a lot more financial flexibility here with the salary cap situation. So there's been all kinds of rumors and rampant discussions around what are the Hawks going to do next. Obviously, there's been a lot of players they've been linked to that they've been possibly inquiring on, having trade discussions. So I thought we'd address those rumors, discuss how each of them could possibly work, and see what's most logical here that they could actually end up doing. Now, there's been 3 main teams that they've been linked to having trade discussions with. There's the Carolina Hurricanes, the Montreal Canadiens, and the Columbus Blue Jackets. And there could be other rumors as well floating around out there, but they're the 3 main ones that I've seen and actually have some substance to them that I think we can go from on reliable sources here that might actually be taking place. So let's start here with the Carolina Hurricanes. Obviously, the Hurricanes have 2 main players that we know have been on the trade block. They've been very public and open about that, and that's Jeff Skinner, obviously a dynamic scoring winger, and defenseman Justin Faulk, who can quarterback a power play and be a nice offensive addition to a top 4 with most teams here around the NHL. So obviously those 2 guys are on the block, and I can see one or possibly both being a good fit with the Chicago Blackhawks. As we know, their blue line is not getting any younger. Obviously, Brent Seabrook and Duncan Keith have had great careers, but obviously Father Time is catching up with them here. They're kind of starting to slow down a little bit. They still have some long-term contracts, which is going to probably handicap this team from moving too much forward here, but at the same time, they need some help on the back end, and Justin Faulk certainly could be a good fit back there to help with that. Add a little bit more of an offensive punch from back there as well. Obviously, up front, Jeff Skinner would fit nicely. You could probably slot him either with Jonathan Toews or Patrick Kane, or there's lots of different line scenarios you could probably imagine where Skinner could be a good fit with Chicago Blackhawks. So could they possibly land one or both of these players in a trade? Well, I do think it's possible, but obviously it ain't going to come cheap, as we know. These players are pretty solid NHL players, and the asking price apparently is quite high. Now, I did see one rumor from a fairly reliable source here that the asking price from the Hurricanes to the Blackhawks would involve center Nick Schmaltz plus the 2019 first-round selection. So obviously that is a pretty steep price to pay, but if you think about it, as much as Schmaltz is a really young, promising, potentially top forward here for Chicago, for them to get a fairly young, promising forward like Jeff Skinner in return, as well as Justin Faulk, I don't know. I'm not sure how you feel about it as a Hawks fan. It does seem to be a reasonably fair asking price. I do think I can see why Chicago would not want to part with Schmaltz. But in order to bring in a high-end winger, it seems to be that a lot of teams are going to be interested in him. Now, I'm sure that they would rather move Artem Anisimov. As we know, he's likely an odd man out here based on other moves that they might need to make. Acquiring any of these higher-end wingers might require them to move even more salary than they already have. Just kind of depends on what they do. And Anisimov is probably the preferred forward that they get off the books here to make some of that happen. So now the only problem is that teams are likely going to be more interested in Schmaltz, understandably so, but I can see from Chicago's standpoint that they would be reluctant to put him in a deal, obviously, because he has a lot of high-end potential here. So I guess if you're a Chicago fan and you can make that deal, you can acquire Skinner and Faulk, but you have to give up next year's first-round selection as well as Schmaltz. How do you feel about that? It's kind of hard to say. I'm not really sure if I would do the deal or not. At this point in time, it's hard to say where Chicago is going to land in the standings here in 2018-19. Depending on what they do for moves, they could very well improve over last year, move up the standings, but they're in an incredibly tough Central Division. They got some real powerhouses ahead of them, like the Winnipeg Jets and the Nashville Predators. So they're going to have a tough time getting too far up the standings, I think. They're going to have to make substantial improvements. And a big question mark, too, is Corey Crawford in net. Can he have a bounce-back, healthy season? Because that was, in my opinion, the biggest reason why they didn't have such a great year last year. They didn't get the goaltending. I mean, the rest of the team certainly had its areas that could have improved as well. But, you put Corey Crawford in there, and some of those flaws kind of get covered up a little bit. So obviously, that's a big question mark, and none of these other rumors are really going to address that, at least from what we've been able to tell so far. So Corey Crawford's health and whether or not he has a healthy, full, productive season next year will certainly play a big role in that. So I guess if it's possible that they don't make the playoffs this coming year, that means that the draft pick they give up, if they make a deal like that, could be a higher pick. So there could be some risk involved with giving away. It could turn out to be quite a valuable NHL player down the road. So let me know what your thoughts are on that type of deal. That's the rumored speculation. So I'm personally, I'm not sure if I'd do that deal. It is tempting to bring Skinner and Faulk into the mix, but you could potentially be giving up two high-end players here between Schmaltz and what that first-round pick turns out to be. Now, there's two other higher-end wingers that they're rumored to be talking about as well. One of them is Max Pacioretty, the Montreal Canadiens. We've seen reports recently out of Montreal indicating that they're not going to be offering him an extension. He's going into the final year of his deal, and that they're actually looking to move him as soon as possible. Now, it's hard to say how much truth there is to that report. Do I think a trade is likely to happen? I really do think there will be one. Hard to say exactly when and to who and what the return will be. But at this point in time, I think they kind of have to trade him with everything that's been said out there publicly. Now, there is some speculation that report might have been kind of helped along by his agent to try to speed things along with either extension talks on a contract or to getting a trade done to getting him a fresh start somewhere else. So there's been other teams linked to Pacioretty as well. Chicago's kind of jumped to the forefront here with this other trade they just made a few days ago. They've kind of taken over the trade rumor world here. For the number of days, it was all Max Pacioretty and Erik Karlsson. Where are they going to go? And all these other teams like Tampa and Vegas and Dallas kind of, being the dominant teams in the rumor mill. But now Chicago's kind of jumped to the forefront as all these other deals, like the Karlsson deal, has been quiet. There hasn't been really any new information the last few days on that front. So now Chicago is all the talk here. So for Chicago to acquire a guy like Max Pacioretty, obviously the big glaring need in Montreal is a center iceman, a top two center for sure, preferably a number one, but at least a number two center. So I'm sure that they're looking at Chicago thinking, if we can get Nick Schmaltz out of Chicago, maybe that deal sounds attractive to us. I mean, would it be Schmaltz and a first-round pick? Maybe not. Hard to say here. I mean, obviously the Canes offer was getting two players instead of one, so I would dare argue that it wouldn't be quite as steep a price for Pacioretty as it would be to acquire Skinner and Faulk both as a package deal here. With Max Pacioretty, they're going to have a winger who's still young enough that has some good productive years ahead of him. He's going to need an extension, which is going to be key here. As we mentioned in a different video a few days ago talking about Max Pacioretty, where he may go. Even though he's not a free agent, he still holds a lot of value here in determining where he goes and what his fate is. The main thing with Pacioretty that he kind of holds the power here is that he's going to need an extension, and any team acquiring him is not going to want to give up anything significant without having that contract extension worked out. So obviously he does play a role and will have a say where he goes, even though he doesn't have any trade protection. But obviously I would think that Montreal will have their eyes on Schmaltz, but I'm sure the Hawks would rather trade Anisimov. So I guess we'll see how that goes. I think that this type of deal is probably a little bit less likely to happen, but at the same time, it could fit longer term as well. Now, the last player we're going to talk about is Chicago bringing back another player, which we know they're fond of doing. They've done it many times here, and that's Columbus Blue Jackets sniper Artemi Panarin. Obviously, it wasn't that long ago, a few seasons back, we saw a Panarin for Saad trade 1-for-1. Could we possibly see that happen yet again? Maybe a return swap? Hard to say, because I know Brandon Saad's another player that has been mentioned here with Chicago Blackhawk trade rumors that they very well would likely want him in return. Now, he's primarily been a top-line winger. He's scored 30 goals before. So could we possibly see a case where Brandon Saad is moved in return for one of these higher-end wingers? It certainly is a remote possibility for sure. But at the same time here, they probably would rather hang on to him. But you're not going to acquire a high-end talented forward and high-end talented winger without giving up something substantial yourself. So if you want to rather keep Nick Schmaltz, then Saad might be the guy who's kind of sacrificed here for the greater good of the team to bring in a guy like Panarin in return. As we know, Saad did have a really good year in Columbus before when he was there. He had his career season came in a Blue Jackets uniform, so they likely would be interested in bringing him back. So could we possibly see that trade maybe reversed, or maybe possibly even have something added to it? Obviously, based on last year's performance, Panarin greatly outplayed Saad. I'm not sure that would be a one-for-one deal if it were to happen. Again, there'd probably have to be something a little bit more added to the mix here. But obviously, Panarin is a player that the Chicago Blackhawks are quite high on, and there was some speculation by some of you viewers actually left comments here saying that when Panarin was traded out of Chicago, that he was told if he didn't sign an extension with the Blue Jackets, they'd love to bring him back as a free agent. Which very well still could happen if he doesn't end up getting traded here, I guess. But at the same time, with all the speculation around Panarin, it's been reported he wants to play in a bigger market around, that's been mentioned he wants to, warmer weather and near a water, like an ocean, like in California or Florida. Obviously, if he goes to Chicago, that will prove to be untrue. But at the same time here, because of all the rumors surrounding him, he likely is going to end up getting traded. If he's not going to sign an extension with the Blue Jackets, they'd be crazy not to. After what happened with John Tavares, I think teams are going to be a lot more aggressive in moving players if they fear they're going to lose them to free agency, because then you get nothing in return and it really sets your franchise back. So obviously, if you're a Blackhawks fan, or would you be quite keen on bringing Panarin back into the fold? I'm sure the answer is probably yes. But I guess the answer, the bigger question here might be is what are you prepared to give up to make that happen? So leave some comments down below and let me know what your thoughts are. If you were to spring a trade with the Blue Jackets to bring Panarin back, what do you think is a reasonable asking price, and what are you prepared to give up to bring him back into the fold? Now, if you're new to the channel here, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams. There's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the like button as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.